Welcome to the Relatable Oklahoma Realtors Podcast, the show that sets out to demystify the world of real estate. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, investor, or a realtor with years of experience, this is where real estate is discussed and explained. Join me now for our hosts, Stacey and Burl Stricker.
Hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Mike, this is Burl.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Burl, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
You too. I feel like I know you because I listened to y'all's entire podcast at Stacey Ford.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You did not.
I did too. Late in the podcast. Said, hey, Mike Duffy, you better sponsor this podcast.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel really special that you're doing this with us.
Paraphrasing your statement, but no. Well, listen. I mean, I'm excited too because I think I like podcasts for one thing because you can find out some really unique and just raw information that you aren't going to get anywhere else. You know, you can get right to experts that don't necessarily work in the broadcast media business day in and day out, which makes them dull in any expertise, right?
Yeah. Because
they aren't out there doing it. You know, if you're a realtor, you're doing real estate and you aren't doing podcasts all day. But when you get someone that does a podcast, like you guys, you know, it's cool because you get to tap into someone that really spends most of their time in the real estate business and occasionally shares that, you know, knowledge, if you will, with other people. So,
right.
I was just telling my friend, I'm like, he doesn't listen to podcasts. And I was like, you really need to listen to podcasts. It's like free information. It's like paying for an audiobook almost. You can find almost any subject. And so I'm a big podcast fan. And so I think I convinced him that he needs to listen to some podcasts, namely this one.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. I'm a huge podcast fan. My wife is too, because like we're into health and fitness, and you can get directly to people that do certain aspects of health, like that trainers that work with professional athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And they aren't running a health TV show or something. They aren't in health media. They literally work with professional athletes, and then occasionally they'll do a podcast.
So what's your top podcast that you listen to?
Oh, are you kidding me? Stacey, you can't ask me that. I mean, if it's anything other than first names, I'm lost. I don't know. My wife would quickly answer that, and I could go in my room right now because I bought 2 books from one podcast guy wrote, and I don't know. Hang on, let me think. He did a recent TV show with Chris Helmsworth called Limitless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I watched that show. We were watching it. We watched it. It's on the Discovery Channel, but it's on like HBO Max or something. Remember, he's a guy that he's like, hey, you know, he's the one that did the cold water plunge.
He followed that hardcore diet.
We watched it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to watch how many of them have you seen? There's 2.
I want to say 4 episodes, 5, something like that.
Did you see the one where he goes out on the balance beam way above the? Oh
yes.
My God.
And then at the end have you seen the end of it where he goes and he snorkels like shh.
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin the surprise.
Watch it. Watch it.
Right. So I think proper introductions is in order. So this is Relatable. I have to look this up to make sure I get it right. Relatable Oklahoma Realtors. I'm Burl Stricker.
Stacey Stricker.
And thank you so much.
Mike Duffy. The man of United Country Real Estate. This is so exciting. I feel giddy.
Yeah, you know, I feel the same because Stacey knows, and you started it. But when I first met Stacey, she was a top 10 agent in the nation. Mm-hmm. And
Burl, did you hear that? I need to make sure Burl gets all this information.
I heard it. You should write this down, Burl. But seriously, you know, I met Stacey, and she's this top agent in the nation out of thousands of agents nationwide. And I'll never forget, we were in Las Vegas at a convention, and I don't know if that was the first time I met you, but I always tell her she intimidated me because I'm like, wow, you know, I mean, she's a top 1% agent in the nation. I hope she doesn't ask me any really hard questions. And then I feel, like I don't know anything. So anyway, so she used to intimidate me, but now I know she's very sharing woman. I mean, hence the podcast. She's more than happy to share her expertise. You are a brilliant realtor, and Burl, I'm just getting to know you, but I know you're now, I'll call you officially her better half. So
he really is.
Mike, I have to tell you real quick, the quick version of this story, how I met this lady. I had an apartment, like a small apartment complex for sale, and it was actually for sale for many years. It's probably one of the biggest stresses in my life, and it had been vacant. And the last tenant, first of all, I had it listed with another realtor. And
big mistake.
It just did nothing for a couple of years. And it was my biggest stressor. It was vacant. And really the last renter had made a complete mess of it. Really, really big stress in my life. And then on top of that, my mother had passed away, and I was living in her home trying to get it ready to sell. And I called Stacey, and literally she had them both sold in about 6 months. And the one with my mom's house is easy to say, oh, yeah. And there is some truth to that one, meaning that, that was a little bit easier. But the apartment complex that she sold for me, it relieved so much stress. And so that's my story about that. And truthfully, that's kind of like my testimony to United Country, to Stacey, and probably it was definitely a high reason why I married her. So
here's what's really funny is he also introduced me to his ex-wife, and I sold her property. And before we started dating, I was trying to recruit her. I was like, oh my gosh, she needs to join our team. She'll be great.
No, but this way you not only got a great new agent on the team through your husband, but you got a husband too.
Real estate's amazing.
Seen you guys on Facebook, and it looks like you're very happy, and I'm happy. That makes me happy for you guys.
You're so nice. Love it. So tell us, give everyone a little bit about you, like how long you and your brother have been with United Country, how that all came about.
Okay. Well, I spent my career, numerous decades doing marketing, advertising marketing. My brother is a financier, and he discovered United Country 16 years ago, or really 17 years ago, working with a group, and the current owners were getting ready to sell. My brother, fell in love with the company and had asked me as a marketing person to come up and take a look at the brand and doing a brand assessment, like the strength of the company from a marketing standpoint. And I ended up falling in love with it. And he and I always talked and said, look, finance and business building. I know sales and marketing. We should work together someday. So, the light went on at that moment. And seriously, at that moment, after I looked at the company, and I said, we should work together on this, because he really wanted it, and ended up, putting myself and a couple other people together to purchase it. And we all bought the company and never looked back. It's been great. So that's how I got into it, is really a passion for marketing and, in advertising. And that's really what United Country is it's a marketing machine. It's a huge marketing machine. And what I saw there was amazing. And the way marketing was evolving and changing, I knew that there was going to be some exciting things that we could bring to the company. And that's how it all came about 16 years ago. It's been a fun ride since, And
that's like right when I came on with United Country too. It's crazy.
Wow. Really?
I know. Yes.
What a coincidence. See, all these great minds were thinking the same thing at the same time.
It is. I agree. I don't disagree. Well, we know there's been a lot of change in real estate the first of this year. So tell me what your thoughts are. Is this the right time to buy, sell? Tell me what's going on in the world of real estate, in your opinion.
Yeah, well, it's probably best as you start looking at 23. I think it's important, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here reflecting on what happened the last couple years, because it was crazy. I mean, it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So for 16, we've been in the company, United Country, has been in business for 100 years. So we have a long history watching real estate outside of urban America, because we don't operate in urban America. We operate in towns like Elk City, as you know, and you know that, Stacey, and you guys understand kind of what we do. So, but we understand this market, and we've watched it for a long time. And I tell you, it's only with hindsight that we can predict what was going to happen back then, right? Because it just went so crazy. We had never seen anything like it. We had watched the market in a very consistent way grow over the decades and continue to grow in value, and land prices were increasing, residential home prices were increasing in the mid-size and small cities of America. More people were moving in that direction. And there were some things driving that, like technology and getting access to high-speed internet. All those things were allowing people, to operate in smaller cities, and they could move out of the country. And I think what none of us predicted the scale of what happened during COVID, which is all at once people were required and forced to work remotely, work from home, and I think it was just a perfect confluence of things that happened at that time. So you had all this great technology that had moved outside of urban areas. And then you had all these smart people that were working in urban areas that were told, don't come into the office, work from home.
Yeah.
And they were trapped. And then meanwhile, other things were happening, like violence in the city, and, crazy things were going on in urban America. And so you just got this giant mass exodus that I know you experienced, and we all experienced in United Country over the last 2 to 3 years. And we saw growth rates of 30, 40%. Things we always grew. We're a 100-year-old company. So to grow, and we're the largest. So to grow at 5%, 10% in a given year, we used to call that an awesome year. If we could grow 3 or 4%, we're like, wow, what a great year. It's been a great real estate year. And 10% would have been fantastic. During the last couple of years, growing at 20, 30, 40%, it was hard to explain. And that's like a podcast in itself. It's an interesting podcast. We actually identified 17 reasons that help define, looking in the rearview mirror, right? It's always easy to predict stuff that's going to happen as long as it happened in the past. That's the kind of predictions I'm really good at. So I am predicting that 20, 21, and 22 are going to be record-breaking years for us, okay? That's my prediction, and dang it, I'll bet money on that.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so that's kind of where we came from, right? Like this crazy market high, for Elk City and other areas. I know you guys were breaking records every year. It was incredible.
It was crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And everyone you're trying to just stay afloat.
Yeah. Prices, and you kept seeing prices increase dramatically. I think real estate prices, for the most part, historically, always increase.
Yeah.
There's given years where they go down a little bit, but not really too much.
Yeah.
And, but for the most part, they're increasing every year.
Well, and the biggest thing, and you would talk about it at convention, I would hear it year after year, the inventory shortage. Well, in our market, you would talk about that, and I think, oh, well, we don't have that problem, because Elk City just did not have that problem. Western Oklahoma did not. We would run with, 200 listings ever since I moved out here, for 16, 17 years. And then COVID hit, and I even pulled up the listings yesterday. We are at 55 listings.
Which is a ton. But for you, for a normal real estate office, actually, that's a lot of listings in a year.
No, that's just like active listings in Elk City right now. That is so little.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes. Yeah, it really is.
From 200. And I think that's the perfect segue into 23 and what's going on. So, interest rates are increasing dramatically, dramatically. Everything's relative, right? So if you've been in the business for 16 years, for more than 10 years, then you know that interest rates today are probably pretty normal. As you look back over the last 10, 15 years, these are very normal interest rates.
Right.
Relative to what they were 2-3 years ago. They are like, if you just entered the real estate market a couple of years ago, you're like, yeah, interest rates are supposed to be 3%, right? 4%. It would be a high interest rate. And those are historically very low, if not the lowest interest rates that we had ever seen. So now it's normalizing. As we move into 23, the Fed continues to increase interest rates. And so you're getting these more historically normal interest rates, kind of in long-term, long-range interest rates. And I think that's kind of where the story of 23, in my opinion, starts. So right now in 23, the market's kind of trying to figure itself out. You've got sellers who have gone through this, and that's why I wanted to start this talk, with what happened over the last couple of years. You got sellers that are saying, wow, man, how property prices increase double digits every year. It's crazy. I love that. Let me get a calculator and figure out what my price is going to be in 23, right? I'll just add another 10 or 15% to that, and there we go. Well, interest rates push that down. They push that price appreciation down. Actually, normally, when you see interest rates increase like we have over these last couple months with the Fed making changes, you would have anticipated typically as interest rates go up, prices fall. But you haven't seen that. Again, these are unusual markets. So you've seen price stability. There's been in some nationwide price stability. Prices have not come down. Now, all real estate's local. So in Elk City, what are you guys seeing on prices?
I mean, they really haven't come down because we have an inventory shortage.
That's right.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the statistics for Oklahoma in general, the price has remained pretty consistent. In fact, it slightly increased. And then you look at availability, though, the number of houses on the market, like Stacey was talking about. That's what you see is there's less of that when you look at it percentage wise, or we're talking about 10, 15% less, properties available, but you still see the price, the median price. It's either stayed the same or it actually slightly increased.
And I think that's exactly right. And so as you start looking at the market and getting at, the question you ask, is it the right time to sell? Prices are, looking like, and most people in the industry are predicting that prices are going to be somewhat flat, but that's not a bad thing, right? Because they took this 3-year run. So prices are going to be, let's call it stable. There may be some slight up, to your point, Burl, some slight down, but for the most part, prices are up and somewhat stable. And what's supporting that is exactly what you guys are talking about, is low inventory.
Yeah.
So if there's fewer buyers in the market because maybe they're afraid of these interest rates, right? They haven't seen them before. Millennials. I thought interest rates were supposed to be 3 or 4%. I would never buy at 6 or 7%, or 8%. And those are historically normal interest rates. And so the millennials will learn the math, and people new to real estate don't have to be a millennial, but if you're just new to real estate, you'll figure out the math behind those interest rates. And those rising interest rates that's going to put a natural downward pressure on price appreciation, right? So that's going to kind of keep prices from increasing in general, but the lack of inventory is going to be pushing prices up. So you got those two opposing forces: interest rates pushing down, lack of inventory pushing up. You got some degree of stability in pricing, right? So if I'm a seller and I'm saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to wait for this market to kind of chill out a little bit and get a higher price. I'm going to wait for the future to get a higher price, right? That prices are predicted for the foreseeable future to be fairly flat. And the reason behind that is they're running to this historical appreciation, which got way out of whack for real estate over the last couple of years. Real estate prices skyrocketed the last couple of years. So you're going to see this moving back to the norm as far as real estate price appreciation. So for the foreseeable future, prices should be somewhat stable. And just as many economists, right? You get 100 economists in a room, and half of them say prices will go up, half say prices will go down. In reality, it'll probably be stable with slight decreases in some markets, some slight increases in some markets. And same for property type, whether you're talking about farms or ranches or residential properties or multifamily. So,
right.
But in the end, I think it's, for me, as I'm looking at this market and watching United Country nationwide, you're looking at price stability we are not predicting price appreciation for at least the next couple years. So
I'll tell you, Mike, it reminds me, we've been talking a lot about interest rates lately. And of course, because that's the hot topic. But, Stacey and I have discussed the fact that we remember when interest rates were normal. And, a lot of people, as you talked about, that maybe are new to real estate or new to are younger, they haven't seen interest rates like this. And so somebody asked me recently, this is an example, is like, how much was the interest rate on that very first house you bought decades ago? And the answer was like 5-6%. And the thing about it is, it's like when interest rates dropped and then they stay dropped for so long, when you look at something like consumer loans, like auto loans, where they're offering 0% interest rate constantly, really that was a scary time, because when you look at it as a business point of view, having that low of interest rate, even then that was a scary time, because we knew that should not sustain itself. So I actually think that the market is correcting itself. And to your point, you said said that really the prices are more stabilized. And then you're talking about price driven from actual, houses on the market versus an interest rate driven or another factor. And so I actually think that the interest rates are back to normal. That to me is a good thing, because it can be scary to go for years and years with this very low interest rate or none. And so I see your point exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more that this is healthy for the industry.
Yes.
And, it really is. But I think back to the point, is it the right time to sell? And I'm not saying this just because I'm in the business. I really believe it is the right time to sell. And let me explain why. You've already had the price run up. So in my opinion, we're at the top of the price market right now. It doesn't mean that prices aren't going to appreciate in the future. They will, but it's going to be at a more modest rate. And so you took the run up. So you're at the kind of the peak of the market right now as far as pricing goes. In time, there is a time cost of money, right? I won't get into that. That's another podcast.
Like the time value of money. Yeah.
Yeah, time value of money. So sitting on something that's already reached its maximum price, not that it's going to be maximum forever, it'll appreciate at a normal rate, is right now is a very good time to sell price-wise. I could also make an argument, if you believe the Fed's going to keep raising interest rates, which most people do, that's going to continue to put downward pressure on price. And as these interest rates come up, it shrinks your buyer pool, right? Because fewer and fewer people can get approved for the loan that they could have got approved for with a lesser interest rate.
Right.
So you got this continued downward, this pressure on shrinking the buyer pool, but you've got your price right now. So putting it out on the market is still a smart thing. And the last thing because you can get maximum price. That's why. And I think there is risk. There's more downward risk because of interest rate risk and buyer risk in the foreseeable future than there is price appreciation. If you're going to wait, if you think the market's going to take a run up, you're kind of on your own this year. There's not a lot of people that are in that camp. So I think price is right. If you're a seller, this is a good time to buy or to sell. The other interesting thing about selling right now is there's a like a momentum in the market right now that you still feel. And this is going to be another interesting question for you guys. You know, there's this measurement in real estate called days on market. Like how long is a property sitting on the market?
Right.
In the last 3 years, as we kind of discussed some of the other factors, that was a factor that got crazy low. Like some properties, I mean, you're seeing properties listing one day and selling the next.
Right.
That was highly unusual. I'd remember times in the real estate industry where it took, 90, 180 days to sell a property, So that days on market is I'm not sure what it is in Elk City, but nationwide, it is still houses that are priced fairly are still not sitting on the market. The market is still moving. I mean, what are you guys seeing there?
It's the same thing, but you said it correctly. Priced fairly, not overpriced. I mean, they will sell.
Yep.
They will sell. I mean, those will go under contract in a matter of days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what that tells me as a seller is I can get my property sold, especially if I work with you guys, because I know you know what you're doing.
Right.
I can get it sold quickly, right? And I can get a really solid price for it because the market's supporting that price. So as a seller, it's interesting. We did this fancy dancy research with sellers, and we were trying to figure out, what do you really want from the ultimate realtor? And the number 1 and 2 things by far, there were other things we learned, but number 1 and 2 are, you're going to be like, wow, I hope you didn't spend money to figure that out. Where I want the best price I can get for my property, and I want it sold as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And granted, then you had to dig below that to figure out specific things that they valued. But in the end, that's ultimately what they want. They're like, I really don't care how you do it, as long as you do it ethically and with, honestly and great character. And, so I didn't mean it like that, but it doesn't matter to me what kind of fancy dancy marketing you use, as long as you can get it sold fast and get me the best market price available.
Yeah.
and so, I think that market still exists.
Oh, I agree.
And so as a seller, I've already gotten my price run up. You kind of, as a seller, maybe some sellers were waiting like, man, the price keeps going up these last couple of years. I'm going to wait until it reaches the peak. I truly can't predict that this is the top of Mount Everest, but I know we're somewhere above the tree line, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah. The air is thin. The oxygen is thin up here.
Mike, something back when you were talking about when you were kind of introducing the company, and then I'm real curious about you said that you guys are a marketing company, and then you talked about that really kind of or you mentioned a word like something like challenges or kind of new way of looking at it. I'm curious what your thoughts are on marketing and how United Country approaches that. And because you see, I think there is some challenges and a different world. And, marketing's not the same as it was, 2 or 3 years ago before COVID. And I think you're right in saying that, you guys are a marketing company, but I would be real curious to know what that looks like from your point of view.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, it's kind of my passion and background. And the reason I fell in love with United Country is back in 1925, this company was founded on a marketing principle or concept, right? And that is, we are going to give broader exposure to the listing because the markets we serve aren't the big cities. So we don't necessarily have the hundreds of thousands of people moving into Elk City every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have as many buyers where you can just stick a sign in the yard and hope to find the ultimate buyer. And a lot of times people that would love a city like Elk City are just not aware of it. Everybody's aware of Dallas or Oklahoma City, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's heard of that. Not everybody's heard of Elk City. I have, you guys obviously have, and people there locally have, but introducing people from outside of Elk City to Elk City, because it's a great community, is part of the opportunity that I think the company saw when it was founded back in 1925, which is some of the coolest, best places to live in America, some people have never heard of. Sometimes I'll talk to people in United Country, and you guys are a top office in the nation. And I'll tell them our top offices are in cities when I'm just traveling around that you've likely never heard of, like Chama, New Mexico,
right?
Or Salida, Colorado, or Moose Lake, Minnesota, Malta, Montana. I could keep going.
Yeah.
And these are cities like people are like, what? Is there even a city really named that? And I'm like, well, not only is there a city named that, there's some extraordinarily talented real estate people that live in those cities,
Yeah.
And so that was the concept, is taking a local listing in Elk City, as an example, just because I'm talking with you guys, and exposing it not only to everyone in Elk City, like all the other realtors are going to do, but exposing it to a broader audience. So you think about concentric circles outside of Elk City, and quite frankly, take that nationwide. So we're showing people that I'll use Dallas just because I mentioned it the other day. We're showing people in Dallas properties in Elk City because they're looking at that going, man, if I spend $500,000 on a house in Dallas, which is a lot of money,
right?
It's a big house. That's a big house. You spend $500,000 on a house in Dallas versus $500,000 on a house in Elk City, you're going to get twice the house in Elk City.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We talked about doing a video about that specific thing, because we've talked to other realtors, even on this podcast, and, that are in bigger markets. And we've talked about, man, it would be a great video to show this is what 300,000 gets you in this area, and this is what 300,000 gets you in our area. And I think people are surprised to know, a 300,000 would get you quite a bit here,
right?
Yeah, in some land,
yes,
more than an eighth of an acre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And United Country does that so well on bringing those buyers to us. Like we had just a couple months ago that were from Colorado. Well, everything's moving from west to east. And so they're landing here because prices are going up, and they can't even afford to rent in Colorado because the rent prices are going up. So they said, hey, we've got family somewhere in Oklahoma, and this is a lot closer, and we can afford to buy here. She works for home. He works for Walmart. So they ended up in Elk City.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Buying their first home.
And that's all. And you know what? That's the exciting thing. And, that's part of that reason that so many people are flooding to our markets.
Yes.
Is that when you look at the top 20 largest cities, cost of living, home prices specifically, and cost of living overall,
right,
versus our cities like Elk City, on average, it's 30% less expensive to buy real estate in the markets we serve. And so when large cities are becoming unaffordable, I mean, I was just looking in Houston at some in the city limits of Houston at 1/8 acre lots, right? Just lots, nothing on them. $500,000 for the dirt for 1/8 of an acre.
Wow. Wow.
$500,000. I mean, can you believe that? And so as cities like Austin, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Miami, major cities, Nashville, Tennessee, they're literally becoming unaffordable. And you just can't afford to live there anymore. And I think what people are realizing is, wow, I can live in a 1-bedroom, 600 square foot rental in the city, or I can own a beautiful home with land in Elk City, or just live in downtown Elk City at half the cost and have twice the quality, twice the standard of living. So I kind of went off track of what you had asked, which is, about the marketing. So what I think sellers need today, especially as this market has a smaller buyer pool, right? Is what you need to find those buyers in Colorado. And you can't do that with the local MLS, the local area websites. You can't do it with a sign in the yard, right? Because there's people from Colorado, they're going to be like, I'd have to drive around every city in Oklahoma to see all the and so you really got to use kind of more sophisticated, advanced type techniques to get to where the people are that we want to reach, whether that be 100 miles from Elk City or statewide all over Oklahoma or regional, super regional, or nationwide. You have to. And so we use, we were one of the very first companies to go out and build websites back in 1992. I think that's right when Al Gore invented them.
Right.
And so we started using websites to sell real estate. Prior to that, in 1925, they did the first national real estate catalog, where they took properties like in Elk City, put them in like a Sears and Roebuck type catalog back in the day, and shipped that all to all the cities and all over the United States to then promote real estate and show people. Granted, back in the 1920s, they didn't have the internet. So they would show people in print, wow, this is what you can afford in Elk City. And it was the same type of story.
Right.
So it's that type of marketing, extensive internet marketing. We own and operate, as you guys know, over 3,000 websites, specialty websites, big national websites, niche marketing type property websites. We advertise in national magazines. We advertise in huge social media circles on a national level. And all that is, of course, complemented with everything you guys are doing, because y'all do amazing social media, amazing video. And so it is kind of better marketing that is needed in a tighter market like this. In marketing that can get that listing exposed to more people. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the type of marketing that best supports the communities like Elk City that we serve, that are not major metro. And so back in that story's never changed from 1925. They said more people would want to move here if they could figure out, if they ever saw it,
right?
If they were ever exposed to it. So how we get it exposed to them today is very different. It's highly digital, electronic, e-marketing type stuff, websites. But you got to really do that in a way that you get in front of millions and millions of people nationwide. And, that's what we spend all of our time doing, working for you guys. Because in reality, I work for you guys trying to provide that type of marketing for you so that you can give to property owners right there in Elk City.
Yeah. Well, so kind of back on selling, we think it's a good time for people to sell. So, and then we're trying to overcome and explain to buyers, hey, it's still a good time to buy, even though they think interest rates are high right now. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, a bunch of thoughts on that. And that is, it is interesting because my daughter was waiting to buy a house. She lived in Denver, Colorado, and they wanted to buy a house. And lo and behold, guess what? They couldn't find a place they could afford.
Yeah. Prices were going up.
Yeah, prices kept going up. They kept waiting. They waited. They were there for 10 years. And they waited for like 5 years. Their strategy was, we're going to wait for these price increases to start. We're going to wait for price decreases. And I said, well, historically, that's not a very good strategy in real estate.
Listen to your dad.
Listen to your father.
And she works for us too.
Yes. But she was going to prove me wrong. And then, interest rates started moving. And I said, that makes it even more expensive, of course, because now prices are stable, or at that time still appreciating dramatically. And now interest rates were increasing. So your total, amount that you could afford, or your mortgage was, your mortgage payment was going up. And so the waiting game only pays out if a couple things are going to happen in the near term, right? One, prices are going to decline, which I think we talked earlier in this program that, I don't think they are. And I think you guys were agreeing, you're like, hey, we're seeing stability in these high prices. And if anything, maybe a little price appreciation locally,
Yeah.
So waiting for prices to decline could be a risky strategy, right? For all the reasons we talked about earlier. And secondly, you have to ask yourself as a buyer, what's going to happen to interest rates over the next 12 months? It's somewhat of a rhetorical question, but man, watch the evening news tonight. If you don't pay attention to interest rates, watch the news tonight, because they'll talk about interest rates. And if they don't tonight, they will tomorrow. So even if you aren't a news watcher and you're a buyer out there listening to this, interest rates are in the news. And they're in the news for a reason. They continue to go up, and the Fed is continuing to try to cool inflation by increasing interest rates. So all the bets on interest rate bets for 2023 are that they're going to continue to increase.
Yeah.
So you got prices that are stable to increasing slightly. Let's just call them stable. You got interest rates increasing. As a buyer, it makes a lot of sense to kind of buy now.
Yeah.
Financially. Because as those interest rates increase, what you can afford is going to decrease.
Right.
So if you're thinking about buying in the next year or two, if you're like, man, in the next year or two, the strategy to wait it out over that time period is in my opinion, way more risky than it is to make a decision now that, you know what, this is a lifestyle decision. And this is a financial stability and building equity and wealth decision that you, in my opinion, as a buyer, should make right now. Because, there's a number of ways you can look at it. Financially, I think we just kind of discussed prices and interest rates combined seem like that's going to continue to be getting more and more challenging for you as a buyer over the next 12 to 24 months. So I wouldn't wait for that financially. But put that aside for a second, because owning a home or owning a property is a lot more valuable than just the finances behind it. I mean, there's a lifestyle. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I do think I know about you guys, because I think I listened to your last podcast and you were talking about how much you loved your home, I think. Am I getting that confused with someone else?
You do love our home.
We do.
I think you do love your home. I think you guys were talking about it. But anyway, I don't, listen, I don't have some fancy, mansion or anything, but I just love my house. It's my house.
Right.
When I travel around a lot and I'm in hotels all the time, I cannot tell you how great it is to come back to my house and my, little kingdom, right? Your house is your kingdom. And so there's a real value in owning a home. There's a real tangible value. And if I said, hey, look, is there a price tag? If I could make your life better, if I could make you happier, would you be willing to pay me for that? A lot of people would say, yeah, hence the concept of Disney World, right?
Right.
I think that's where Disney World came from. Hey, I'll make you happy if you give me money.
Yeah. Well, and that's like what we talk about. Like the best part is when we have all the kids in our home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best part.
Well, and you bring up a really great point. I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking about what you're saying. And it's like, I think it's real easy to think interest rate affects wanting to buy a home, or, pricing reflects. Those things do reflect, are a part of the decision, of course. But think about, there's so many other big decisions that to be made to buy a home. For example, this is a house I really like, and it's in a neighborhood I really like, and it's in an area that I really like. And, you can think our family's getting bigger. I think that there's so many other factors that are not talked about on the news necessarily. And I think it's like, we're dealing with someone that we just put a contract on a home right now that's actually a friend of mine. And, he wants this house because he likes this house. It has the features that he likes.
Right.
And I think that those things often go untalked about, that when you're talking about stable pricing, when you're talking about interest rate more reflective of what is really supposed to be normal. But yet you find a house that you really like. I mean, I think these things should not deter you from purchasing a home. And I think that part of that is, it sounds so simple, but I think it's not talked about enough. It's like, if you find something you really enjoy, that you like, that you feel like on your point, Mike, that you can call home, that you feel comfortable in this area, then you can't, I mean, what kind of price are you going to put on that?
Right.
Well,
yeah.
And the bank's not going to loan you money if you can't afford it. Those days are gone too.
Right.
You have to jump through hoops.
Yeah. And the bank's not going to loan you money if they didn't think it was a solid investment.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that they're not in the business of losing money on loaning money. That's why banks are always around.
Yeah.
So real estate is an amazing investment. So let's shift from the emotional lifestyle benefits of buying a place, right? We talked a little bit about the finances. Let's get back to one other aspect of the finances. And it's what I told my daughter. I said, how much are you paying in rent?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And shouldn't that be applied instead to a mortgage? And now you're building equity. You're just buying someone else's mortgage, paying rent. That's all you're doing. You're literally buying a place for someone else. And I said, so apply that money to a mortgage. And now you're building equity. So now I'm getting back to the practical financial value of owning a home. Mm-hmm. I mean, my goodness, you should see what happened to homeowner equity over the last 4 to 5 years is astronomical. There is so much equity out in the market. It's crazy. And the only way you can start building equity is to own a home or own a property.
Right.
And
my best.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say my best friend who is in finance, does a lot of our accounting for our office, has been renting for over 10 years. And I want to strangle her neck. What are you doing?
Yeah. What are you doing? Add that money up.
Yes. I said, you bought this house for him.
Yeah. What's the point? And can you imagine what she would have made over that 10 years?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
And it is crazy to me.
And I was reading a report by, I think it was called Apartment Renter National Survey. And this is crazy. So in 20, rent prices increased by 7%. In 20, yeah. Isn't that crazy? In 21, some similar to that. In 22, close to 20%.
Oh my gosh.
$1,100 to $1,300 on average. So, I mean, wow.
Unreal.
That's kind of crazy. And so you've got rent prices continuing to increase. They're high. You know what the prediction on rent is? Stability. They don't really predict a giant increase again, right? And we won't get into that. That's a whole other podcast.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, but you got these high rents, and it's not like your landlord's going to come to you next year and say, hey, you know what? Market's kind of crazy right now. I'm going to go ahead and lower your rent 20%.
Right. That doesn't work.
That's not going to happen.
No.
You know, so anyway, yeah. So I think although I think it's a healthy real estate market right now, and it's getting back to your point, Brian, where this is a normalizing of the market. It's healthy. I think it's a good time for sellers because they've got good prices. It's a good time for buyers for all the reasons that we just discussed a second ago. And trying to time this market and trying to time the real estate market can be a very expensive game. So if you're thinking about buying, interest rates are still historically low. And I'm telling you, well, I'm not, let me back up a little. A lot of people think that they're only going to get higher. So moving sooner rather than later is probably a smart thing.
Right.
You know, what do I know? Again, if I could predict interest rates, don't they always say, you know, if you could predict interest rates, you'd be floating around on a yacht somewhere?
Right. So what would you say to someone if they wanted to get into the real estate industry?
You know, it's interesting because you remember going back in 2006 was a very hot real estate market. 2005, 2006. It wasn't as hot as the last 3 years, but it was pretty hot.
Right.
And it was driven by crazy bank lending. And I'll just stop there. It was like they were giving loans to people that they shouldn't have been giving loans to. That's been cleaned up a lot. So this one was driven by different things, more fundamental things happening that we discussed earlier in this podcast. So I will never forget. In 2007, there were 1.6 million realtors in the United States that were in NAR, 1.6 million.
Right.
There was then the great real estate depression that started in 2007, 2008. And half of those realtors hung up their license, quit.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, that's just insane.
That's like when I started. I was like,
yeah. That's when
let's start at the worst time.
But that's right now, it's a tighter market. So to me, it's a great time to get into real estate for the same reason you're sitting there today, owning one of the top real estate offices in the nation, and it's the same reason you were a top 1% agent in the nation before you bought your own real estate office.
Yeah.
Because you entered in a time where you really had to use marketing expertise, selling skill, understanding how to do real estate in a professional manner.
Oh, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Oh, Peyton and I have been really talking about this at our last several office meetings because we had so many new realtors come on since COVID. And we're like, listen, it's easy now. You've had business fall into your lap, but that's not the norm.
Right.
And so, you're having to share the value. Why do you stay with a broker and not go out on your own? Why do you want to be with a franchise? And, you answer all those questions. Well, when it's busy, people think, well, they don't need that. Well, we explain to them, I promise you'll see the value when we hit a downturn, because that's when Peyton and I both built our businesses, was starting in a downturn and into a city that neither one of us were from. And didn't know anybody. Right.
And yeah, so now in these kind of markets where it's not quite so easy as it was in 2005, 6,
right?
It's not quite so, there was not so many buyers and sellers as there were even in the last 3 or 4 years. Now you really have to get back to the hardcore professional discipline that I know you do every day, regardless of the market, because of where you came from, because you entered the market at a time like this, when you really need to do exquisite, extraordinary marketing,
right,
to get properties represented and sold properly and exposed to more people. That's where, to your point, you really see all that making a difference. And that's, so I think if a realtor comes into a market like this, my prediction, there's going to be a lot of realtors that came into the real estate industry over the last 2 to 3 years that don't have that knowledge, expertise, and discipline and work ethic, that thought it was just easy, that are not going to be here in a year or two.
I agree.
And so
I agree. I think it's very diverse. I mean, I think it's become a lot more diverse than it used to be. And I think that, you think we've heard the statistic on the news, and we're talking about this on the seller side. I mean, the client side, but still, I think it speaks to real estate in general that, like, if you have single women and single men, that single women are owning homes way faster rate than single men, as an example. And we were looking at those statistics, and it really makes me think of real estate as a whole. As a realtor, same thing. It's like, it's really become diverse, and the people who are a part of that are interested in real estate now are a lot different than they looked at 10 years ago. It's a lot different situation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Hey, and I'll give you a little side note insight as to why more women buy homes faster and stuff. Because guys are out there spending all their money on shotguns and camo and ATVs.
I don't doubt that.
It talked about one of the reasons, and I see I see the same reason why a lot of women are very successful in real estate as well. It's like they like the security aspect of it, so they're owning their own home. Back to what you were talking about, renting. It's like guys can maybe. The security is not as important, and so you're talking about these female, that the security is really important of owning their own home,
right,
versus renting.
And listen, I didn't say this, so don't, make sure no one else heard this. And women are just financially smarter than guys, aren't they, Stacey? That's what you always told me.
I do not disagree with what you just said. Do not disagree. But I think it's a great industry, and we're talking about female being in it. So, Jim Jones, who sells franchises, he will actually send a lot of people. I shouldn't say a lot, several people my way. Like, after he's talked to them, he's like, hey, call her. I think she would be great for you to visit with. And a lot of the questions I get from them are, would you ever tell someone like me to not do this or not be involved in activities with my children or coach? And I'm like, no, because they've heard that before from other brokers telling them, don't be as involved in things. And I was like, absolutely not, because that was a key to my success.
Oh, we were interviewing a realtor. She owns her own brokerage firm out of Oklahoma City, and it was a topic of like, hey, I took
bring
my
our kids
to, listing appointments. And I think that attitude is completely changed. Whereas there's things in certain markets that we understand that family is important and kids are important. And I think that the industry as a whole is noticing the importance of that.
But this one, I think she was in Missouri. But I said, no, that's how you get your name out there, basically organically, is being involved in your community, coaching and showing up at the school functions, book fairs, whatever.
Right.
That's a different way to do it.
I totally agree. And listen, as a marketer, there is no more powerful marketing than word of mouth.
Right.
And when people get to know you on a human level, on a personal level, and a light goes on and they go, you know what? This is a really good, honest, very intelligent person that's passionate about not only their family and children where I'm meeting them, but they also seem very passionate about their profession in real estate. Your most valuable asset is likely your house. And if you are lucky enough to own a property, maybe a hunting property or a farm or something like that, those are your most valuable assets. You're going to want to make sure the person, when you do decide to sell those, you're going to make sure that the person that you allow to handle your most valuable asset is someone that you trust, someone that you respect, that you have met, so there is no more powerful thing you can do, interestingly enough, for your real estate career than to meet other people and let them get to know you as a human as much as a professional.
Especially in the size of communities that most of us work in. They want that personal touch.
I agree.
Is there, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things. Is there anything that we missed that you would like to talk about or that you would like to mention on our show?
Man, I'm like you guys. I love real estate. I could talk about different aspects of real estate. Maybe maybe you guys will invite me back. You'll have to see how your ratings are first.
Hey, we think we're going to bring our show on the road to convention. We're going to set up a table.
Cool. Yeah. I love it. Sure. You should. Yeah. You should, because, thing I love about the convention, there's some of the most talented specialty realtors in that room.
Yes.
That you'll ever meet. Like, I was talking to someone today. United Country sells more farms, more hunting properties, more homes in the communities, non-urban communities than anyone, more land.
Yeah.
But when you start drilling down, you get to the most interesting kind of property. So I was talking to someone today that was asking me a bunch of questions about off-grid or survival properties. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the top 2 or 3 experts in the nation on survival properties or off-grid properties, and I'm telling you, she knows everything. She is so interesting.
You did a Facebook Live with her, didn't you, one time?
Yes.
I remember watching that.
Oh, I've known her for years.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first met her and started talking about this, I was in her office, and she's just a brilliant expert on off-grid properties.
Yeah.
And that's not someone you're just going to meet like on the street. So I think taking this show to the convention and talking to horse experts and off-grid mountain properties, coastal properties, farms, ranches. I mean, you get the most amazing people at that convention.
Oh, I agree. Because when you did that Facebook Live with her, I mean, there was things that I would have never thought of ever.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. That's what's great. I really feel like that's great about United Country. So, okay.
Is there, just before we're going to go into a little portion we always go into the show, which is we didn't again make it up, but we like to do it. So it's whether an item is overrated, underrated, or just right. And so it's actually Stacey's turn, and we want your input.
Yeah. So, and I actually prepared. I don't normally prepare.
She does not prepare.
Normally I do it on the fly, but Burl said you should prepare
this time
because you have a big wig coming on today. Okay. So you're going to tell me if it's overrated, underrated, or just right. And I want both of your opinions. Okay. So we just got back from, as you know, auction school. Mm-hmm. Chat GPT, like the open AI.
Yeah. I definitely think it's underrated. I'm usually very apprehensive about some of the new technology, especially when it comes to AI, artificial intelligence. However, when you look at the numbers that Microsoft has invested, I believe it was $150 million. I think that when you look at the investment that Google's made into it, which they doubled that, and really just using what it took for me was when we're in auctioneer school is that we actually used it. Yeah. And it has crazy implications. And I think it's another tool that every business can use. And I don't think it's going away. So I would say underrated.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to agree with you. I have a son who's a software engineer, a programmer for AMD, and he lives in Austin. And he kind of showed me the power of AI one day, just literally on his cell phone, riding down the road. And it blew me away. And what we're talking about, is like the AI that he showed me. He literally said, hey, and this was unplanned. He said, hey, AI person or whatever, AI system, write me a history of United Country that I can put on my website.
Yeah.
And it instantly came back with the most elegantly written history of United Country. And I mean, it was 95% accurate. It was 100% good enough. It was 120% perfect grammar, spelling. It sounded like a human had written it.
Yes.
It sounded exactly, it was factually correct. I would have added some things that the AI couldn't find because they were things that weren't yet out on websites anywhere.
Right. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I think it's a great tool. I think it has the potential to be abused. You know, I think, I'll give you an example of that. I've heard recently that college campuses,
Harvard
they've had to get programs for doctoral students and for students in general that are writing essays and papers, because you can tell an AI, write me a 3,000 word essay on the value of solar power.
Yeah. So Harvard has banned it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've heard that.
But it's, it's powerful. I've also heard that Google in the future may look at purely AI written websites and decrease their SEO power because they know that it's purely AI. And, so I think I'm cautiously optimistic about what it can do. I really am. I think it's a great tool, to your point, Burl. I think it's a perfect tool for helping us take knowledge and information to the next level. But at the same time, in the end, it's a tool, and it's really, humans have to learn how to work with AI to enhance it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a theme that Stacey and I talk a lot about, and it's really about hiring a professional. I think a lot of what real estate is about is like really hiring the expert in that area. Yeah, you could go out and learn all you can on the internet about being a realtor, but you really want to hire that expert. And I think this could be a tool, as you said, it could, if used the right way, maybe you're not the best writer and yet you do other things really well. So I think that it could help in that situation too. So
I agree. Yeah. My listing descriptions are freaking phenomenal now. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, of course I've changed them a little bit, but you kind of get a little bit of block. Do these all sound the same? Well, this is thrown in some new words that I wouldn't normally use.
Yeah. So, no, I think it's a great tool. And again, I do think the human touch in combination with AI is the ultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. All right. Next.
Okay. Next one. Brick and mortar offices.
I think that's a tough one. I'm going to go with just right, kind of in the middle. And the reason I say that is because I see that, because of COVID, many, many people were working from home, and I see the benefit from that. I really do. I think more time with family, not so much, commuting, all these things that are positive. But also, I think, especially in the area we live in, in fact, a local bank will tell you this, that every day people go into the bank and they really just visit their people. And I think that that, especially in small towns, is not going to go away. People want to be face to face with people. And I think, we need that. We need that face to face sometimes. And so I'm going to call it in the middle.
Just right.
Yeah.
Just right. Mike, what do you think?
I really agree, that it is there's such a critical value that I think a lot of people that maybe are just entering the workforce and working remotely, they lose so much opportunity to gain from working face to face and in an organic way with others, in an office situation. And I think there's the socialization aspect that you were just talking about that has high value. And in the end, when it comes to things, because now we're talking about a real estate office. So when it comes to things like doing a real estate deal, this is just me, but I think I'm representative of a lot of people, not necessarily everybody. In the end, when I'm dealing with my most valuable asset, at some point, I want to look you in the eye. Like a physical you in the eye.
I agree.
in meeting in that professional environment, I think communicates in itself to my clients that, hey, I take this serious. I'm a very serious business professional. And this is a spot where we can go and talk privately. You can meet some of the other team. It's a great place too to bring the team together, and really build the teamwork and sharing of ideas and knowledge, expertise, motivation, inspiration. So I agree that it's kind of at a good spot right now. I don't think it plays the central role it played a decade ago or beyond, even further back than that.
Right.
So I do think it's really evolved over time. You probably don't need as big as a brick and mortar because, and I think it's this hybrid model where there's so much that can be done remotely, but from time to time, the value of that being able to have a place to meet clients, bring the team together, share ideas, talk, just spend time with your other teammates is highly, highly valuable. And I think that's underrated. I know you didn't ask, but spending non-planned time with people, your ability to learn, learning around the water cooler, so to speak, is so invaluable. You can get so much more done just hanging around, listening to other people's conversations in the office. Even you learn so much that might trigger a conversation with that person and say, how do you deal with an easement like that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Peyton and I we just purchased a new office in Altus and moved over there just like 3 weeks ago, right? Is that 3 weeks ago? And we did the same concept as we have in Elk City, where it's an open concept. We don't have any closed off. We don't have cubicles, but we like that because of what you're saying, the brainstorming. We're actually in our old office right now where we were separated before. And, when we moved over there, people we had worked with for 10 years, we got to know so much better because of the open concept.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
We've done that at the home office too. We've really done away with the cubicle concept and gone to the concept. And it's a lot better because there's a lot more collaboration and
absolutely.
People, it's awesome. And
especially,
they're just
for new agents, and they get to hear someone that's been in the business 10 years handle a phone conversation that's maybe difficult, or, go over a contract with someone. That's priceless.
Yeah, and Mike, I think you actually bring up a good point that I haven't thought of before. And I think I can't think of the right word, but it's kind of without the pomp and pump. In other words, it's without the hype. In other words, I think that, before there was times whenever we feel like offices had to look perfect and everything was in it, the best desk and the best. And I think that part had gone away, and meaning that, and I think whether you're talking about social media or in office situations, that people like the real you. I think that they really do. And I think that one thing we might have got out of COVID very positive is that, we're back in the brick and mortar, but also maybe it's without all the hype. And I think you are right. I've never thought about that way. And I think you hit on a great point.
Yeah.
All right, last one.
Okay, last one. So we have convention next month. So I'm going to piggyback off of that. We're going to the Gulf Shores. Do we think the Gulf Shores are underrated, overrated, or just right?
Yeah, so I've been to the Gulf Shores. I've never been to convention, obviously, with y'all, but I've been to the Gulf Shores many times, and I'm a big fan. I think that that area is beautiful. And really, when it comes to traveling distance, it's doable for us, but I think the area, you can't beat it. I think there's parts of other beach areas that are way more populated, where it's just like, it feels like a huge crowd, but I've always just loved the feel of the Gulf Shores. And then I love the water, of course. The beach is beautiful. I think people would be surprised that like some of the most well-known beaches in the world are not as pretty as the Gulf Shores. I think Gulf Shores is beautiful. So I'd say underrated.
I'm going to agree. I like the Gulf Shores.
Yeah, I'm going to say underrated also because, the redneck Riviera.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And then, key word, Riviera there, not just redneck. Now, I am a redneck. So.
I mean, it fits with our business very well.
It does. and I think it's more real, so I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Burl was saying there about, Gulf Shores, the redneck Riviera. It's very real. Like the people that go there, it's a nice mix of families, some spring breakers. So it's more of a mix. They're real people that are there, salt of the earth. I love that. Great restaurants, good nightlife, great beaches, to your point. And the other thing too is they aren't as well known. So I think you mentioned that, Burl, that some of these other beaches are like overcrowded.
Right. Like a Destin or
Right. And we're probably ruining that now that we're talking about this on your podcast. But
we want to be influencers.
What do they always say? One of the best kept secrets. It's kind of like where Brad Smith lives in Florida, the Big Bend of Florida.
Yeah.
It is like nobody knows about that part of Florida other than Floridians.
Right.
Yeah.
So where Floridians go on vacation, where they retire, there.
Yeah.
And it's all the other people from not Florida that go to Fort Lauderdale and Miami and Fort Myers.
Right. Well, we are excited for convention and everything that you're going to share with us there. And
yep, I'm excited to go for my first time. Mike, if people want to get a hold of you, they want to connect with you, can you just tell a couple of ways that would be best if they're would like more information also about United Country? How would they do that?
Yeah. So how would you get in touch with me? No,
do you want to share that?
Do you might not want to share that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. So one way you can do it is, if you want to find out more about United Country, I would recommend, go to unitedcountry.com. That's our national site. We own a lot of websites. If you're interested, in joining United Country as an agent, maybe working for Stacey with Stacey and Burl, there in Elk City and or elsewhere, you can visit joinunitedcountry.com. And that tells you all about what we do different and how we approach the market, which is very different than other real estate companies.
Yeah.
And in any of those cases, you can find me on any kind of social media, Facebook. I'm mainly a Facebook kind of guy. I'm kind of old,
Right.
I'm old. I do, I do almost every social media platform, but from a professional standpoint, I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, and you can just look for United Country Real Estate or Michael Duffy. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and stuff. I don't know all my handles. I should, but I don't.
Well, thank you so much. That's great information.
I couldn't believe that she could get you, and she did. So we appreciate your time.
I think you just underestimated me.
But anyway, we do appreciate your time.
Underappreciated.
I think I was just underrated.
Yeah, I know.
She's definitely underrated. But I look forward to meeting you in person also at the convention. And but thank you for taking the time, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. And listen, thank you guys for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. Totally respect what y'all do. And, congratulations for another amazing year last year.
Thank you.
It's going to be the same this year. And it's always fun to keep up and watch what you guys are doing. And, as a marketer, I value and appreciate, as you know, the specific type of marketing that you guys do there locally and regionally. And, as you were recognized as the Genesis Award winners, which are out of all the 500 offices nationwide, you guys were the number one marketing office in the country, right there out of Elk City, Oklahoma.
Yeah. And that just keeps pushing us.
Yeah.
You just got to do better.
It's amazing. You guys are doing great stuff. And I really
thank you.
Was excited to get on your show. And thank you so much for the invitation. It's been
thank you. All right. See you next month.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Take care.